6 terrifying theme park accidents caught on camera. Fatal falls, shocking malfunctions, moments captured that parks never wanted the world to see. These are not Hollywood effects. These are real people, real rides, and real consequences. And after watching this, you will think twice before strapping into your next roller coaster. A 12-year-old boy in the front row of a hydraulic launch coaster, a cable under 18 months of fatigue, and a snap that his mother watched happen from the ground.
If the operator doesn't do it right, people die.
Story 1. The accelerator cable snap at Knott's Berry Farm. September 15th, 2009, Knott's Berry Farm, Southern California. 12-year-old Kyle Wheeler and his father Russell had come to the park specifically to ride the accelerator, a hydraulic launch coaster that rocketed from 0 to 82 miles per hour in just over 2 seconds before shooting straight up a 205-foot tower. Kyle's mother Anita waited below with her camera, watching as her husband and son climbed into the front row. Seconds after the launch sequence initiated, a loud metallic creak echoed through the station. Then the thick steel launch cable snapped. Video captured the moment. The cable whipped loose, sending metal fragments flying in every direction. The train jerked forward, began its climb, then slid horrifyingly back down into the station. Kyle, seated in the front row, took the direct impact. The cable lashed across his left leg, split the fiberglass car in half, and lacerated deep into his muscle tissue. His father, Russell, sitting beside him, was showered with debris and nearly struck in the face. Anita, watching from below, described the experience afterward in an online message, writing that she had genuinely believed she had just watched her son and husband die in front of her eyes. Kyle was rushed to hospital. In the months that followed, he underwent multiple surgeries to repair shredded tissue, graft skin, and slowly rebuild the ability to walk through painful physical therapy. The investigation found the cable showed gross amounts of fatigue, with 18 of the 20 launch magnets beneath the train sheared off entirely by the force of the failure. Inspectors determined the accident was preventable with proper maintenance. Intamin, the Swiss manufacturer, had advised monthly cable inspections. Knott's Berry Farm had been inspecting the ride only once every 6 months and was nearly 3 weeks overdue at the time of the accident. The Wheeler family reached a confidential settlement with Cedar Fair in 2011 covering Kyle's medical expenses and future surgeries. The accelerator reopened with a replaced launch system and stricter inspection protocols. It still runs today at the same speed and the same drop. But for those who were there on September 15th, 2009, the sound of that cable snapping under pressure is not something that fades. Next, a man hanging from the outside of a slow-moving sky gondola 50 feet above the ground. The crowd below thought it was a stunt. It was not. Story 2. The Lagoon Skyride Fall. August 14th, 2021. Lagoon Amusement Park, Farmington, Utah. A 32-year-old man boarded the Skyride, one of the park's most peaceful attractions. A slow-moving cable lift carrying guests 50 feet above the ground from one end of the park to the other, not built for thrills, just a gentle glide over the lights and sounds below. Halfway across the park, witnesses began noticing something deeply wrong. A man was hanging from the outside of the moving gondola, one hand gripping the safety bar, his legs dangling freely above the concrete below. People pulled out phones. Some laughed, assuming it was a professional stunt or some kind of performance. Video captured bystanders watching and commenting with genuine confusion about why someone was hanging from the ride that way. Beneath him, the crowd began to understand. People began shouting at him to hold on. The Skyride kept moving, carrying him further across the park as panic spread through the witnesses below. Then he fell, approximately 50 feet onto the ground below. The sound, witnesses described, silenced everything around it. Paramedics reached him within minutes. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. The investigation raised more questions than it answered. Surveillance footage showed the man behaving erratically before boarding, and park employees had noted he seemed disoriented. Whether he had deliberately climbed out of the gondola or slipped while adjusting his position was never definitively established. The Skyride had operated for over 50 years without a single fatal incident and was never designed with restraints because for 5 decades no one had ever needed them. Lagoon temporarily closed the Skyride for inspection and reopened it with new warning signage. The ride itself remained structurally unchanged. No lawsuit was filed. The case was closed quietly. For those who were standing in that crowd watching it happen, the moment when the laughter stopped has not. Coming up, England's most intense roller coaster, a stalled test car sitting directly on the track, and a loaded passenger train dispatched straight into it at 50 miles per hour. Story 3. The Smiler Crash at Alton Towers. June 2nd, 2015. Alton Towers Resort, Staffordshire, England. The Smiler was Alton Towers' most ambitious attraction, holding the world record for the most inversions on a single roller coaster with 14 gut-wrenching flips at 52 miles per hour. That afternoon, the park was packed with thousands waiting in line for their turn. Earlier that morning, an empty test car had stalled on the track due to high winds. The ride's automated safety system had detected it and flagged the issue correctly. But engineers assumed the computer was malfunctioning rather than warning them about a real obstruction on the track. They manually overrode the safety protocols multiple times without physically going to verify whether the stalled car had actually been cleared. It had not. At 2:09 in the afternoon, a fully loaded passenger train carrying 16 people was dispatched. Not one of those 16 passengers had any idea a stationary train was sitting directly in their path. The collision happened at 50 miles per hour. The front car of the passenger train crumpled on contact. Metal twisted, seats buckled. Two young women in the front row, 18-year-old Leah Washington and 20-year-old Vicky Balch, absorbed the full force of the impact. Both suffered leg injuries so catastrophic that amputation was the only option. Other passengers sustained shattered knees, broken ribs, collapsed lungs, and psychological trauma that would outlast any physical recovery. The nightmare did not end with the collision. The mangled trains were stuck on the track at a steep angle. Some passengers were hanging upside down. Rescue crews could not reach them immediately, because the ride's complex, twisted structure made access nearly impossible. For over 4 hours, injured passengers remained trapped and suspended in their seats, bleeding and in shock, while firefighters cut through the steel framework to free them one by one. News helicopters broadcast the entire scene live. The world watched. Alton Towers was fined £5 million, the largest penalty ever issued to a UK theme park. The investigation found no individual was solely responsible. The park had no formal risk assessments, poor staff training, and no protocol for overriding the ride's computer systems. Engineers had been working under intensely flawed procedures that led them to assume the safety system had made an error. Merlin Entertainments pleaded guilty to health and safety breaches. The Smiler reopened in 2016 with upgraded brakes, wind speed limits, and mandatory physical track checks before any dispatch. For Leah Washington and Vicky Balch, the changes came far too late. As one of their lawyers stated, "Money alone will never replace limbs." Next, a family water ride that had operated safely for 30 years, a pump failure nobody responded to, and a conveyor belt that kept running while 4 people were pulled into its machinery. Story 4. Thunder River Rapids at Dreamworld. October 25th, 2016. Dreamworld Theme Park, Gold Coast, Australia. Thunder River Rapids had been a family attraction since 1986. Circular rafts floating through artificial rapids and gentle waterfalls. Nothing extreme, nothing that looked like it could kill anyone. That afternoon, 2 families shared the same raft. Kate Goodchild, 32, and her brother Luke Dorset, 35. Kate's 2 children aged 10 and 12. Luke's partner Ruzi Aragi, 38, and family friend Cindy Lowe, 42. The ride began normally. Laughter, splashing. Everything families expect from a gentle water attraction. Then a water pump failed mid-ride, draining water from a critical section of the channel. With insufficient water beneath it, an empty raft ahead became stranded on the now exposed metal support rails near the conveyor belt. The family's raft, still moving, collided with the stranded vessel. The impact flipped both rafts vertically. All 4 adults were thrown forward into the conveyor belt machinery below. The belt kept running. It had no sensors to detect obstructions, no automatic shutoff, no emergency stop that activated on its own. It simply continued pulling the victims under and crushing them between metal components and the concrete channel floor. Kate's 2 children, seated in the center of the raft, were thrown clear of the machinery. They survived. They watched their mother and uncle die. By the time operators manually stopped the belt, it was already over. All 4 adults were pronounced dead at the scene. The investigation revealed the park had been receiving warning signs for years. Thunder River Rapids had logged over 100 mechanical incidents before the tragedy. The same water pump had tripped 3 times in the days immediately leading up to the accident, with staff simply resetting it each time rather than investigating the underlying problem. The ride's own engineer admitted during the investigation that he did not know how the emergency stop system worked. Staff had received approximately 90 minutes of training. Dreamworld was fined $3.6 million, the largest workplace safety penalty in Australian history. The ride was demolished. The site remains empty. Coming up, a 17-year-old at Six Flags who climbed 2 fences to retrieve his hat from beneath an active roller coaster. What happened next was captured on surveillance camera. Story 5. The Batman roller coaster incident at Six Flags. Georgia. June 28, 2008. Six Flags Over Georgia. 17-year-old Asia Ferguson had come to the park with his church youth group, specifically to ride Batman. The ride. An inverted steel roller coaster where passengers hang beneath the track with legs dangling freely through 5 inversions at 50 miles per hour. Asia rode it once, loved it, and went back for a second run. During the second ride, his hat flew off near the first loop. When the ride ended, he told his friends he was going to get it back. Surveillance footage captured what happened next. Asia walked past the exit, approached a 6-foot chain-link fence marked with multiple danger and restricted area warning signs, and climbed over it. Then he climbed over a second fence. He was now in a maintenance zone beneath the active roller coaster at the section where the track dips to its lowest clearance point above the ground. He found his hat. He bent down to pick it up. The coaster was still running, dispatching trains every few minutes. As Asia reached for his hat, a train came through the loop at 50 miles per hour. On an inverted coaster, riders' legs hang below the train. At the lowest clearance point of the track, those legs were at head height. One of them struck Asia directly in the head. The impact was instantly fatal. The ride continued its cycle. It was not until traumatized guests in the queue who had witnessed what happened reported it to operators that the system was finally shut down. Six Flags was legally cleared. Asia had bypassed multiple physical barriers and clearly posted warning signs to enter a restricted maintenance zone, and the ride was operating exactly as designed. But the questions raised by people who knew him never fully went away. Asia Ferguson had gone to Six Flags for a summer day with his church group and never came home over a hat. Finally, the world's tallest water slide, a designer with no engineering qualifications, a 10-year-old boy who loved the ride so much he wanted to go again, and a fatal design flaw the park had known about for 2 years. Story 6. The Verricht Water Slide. August 7th, 2016. Schlitterbahn Water Park, Kansas City. At 168 feet, Verricht was the tallest water slide ever constructed on Earth. Riders climbed 264 steps to the top before plummeting down a near-vertical drop and launching over a second massive hill at speeds reaching 70 miles per hour. The name was German for insane, and it earned it. 10-year-old Caleb Schwab was at the park with his family. His father was a Kansas state legislator, and Schlitterbahn had given them VIP access for the day. Caleb had ridden Verricht earlier and wanted to go again. For his second ride, he was paired with 2 adult women. Their combined weight of 546 pounds fell just under the ride's limit, but Caleb, the lightest rider, was seated at the front. The weight distribution was critically uneven. As the raft plummeted down the first drop and launched over the second hill, the front lifted and became airborne. Caleb was thrown upward from his seat, and his body struck the metal support bars holding up the safety netting that surrounded the track. The impact decapitated him instantly. The 2 women in the raft survived with injuries from the netting. When the raft reached the bottom, Caleb was not in it. The investigation revealed Verricht should never have been built in the form it took. During early testing, engineers had watched sandbags fly out of rafts repeatedly, confirming the design was fundamentally flawed. Rather than fixing the flaw, the park added metal netting as a solution, the same netting that killed Caleb. The slide's designer, Jeff Henry, had no formal engineering training and had dropped out of high school. Internal emails showed him joking about the ride's dangers and describing it as a death wish. The slide had been rushed to completion specifically to meet a television filming deadline for a Travel Channel show. Kansas had virtually no water park regulations at the time. No required engineering standards, no mandatory inspections, no independent oversight of any kind. Schlitterbahn operated Verricht for 2 years, knowing rafts could go airborne, and knowing the restraint system was inadequate. They kept selling tickets. Criminal charges were eventually filed against Henry and other park executives, but were dismissed on a technicality in 2019. No one went to prison. Caleb's family settled a wrongful death lawsuit for $20 million. Verricht was demolished in 2018. The site was bulldozed flat. Caleb Schwab's death was entirely preventable, and it took the death of a 10-year-old child to finally change water park safety laws in Kansas. 6 accidents, 6 failures, 6 moments when everything that was supposed to keep people safe stopped working. These were not freak accidents or bad luck. They were the direct result of choices made by people who knew better. Cables inspected half as often as required, safety systems manually overridden, pump failures reset and ignored. Design flaws covered with netting instead of fixed. Every ride you have ever boarded was built by people, maintained by people, and operated by people. And when people cut corners, the consequences are not financial, they are human. Drop a comment below. Will you ever look at a theme park ride the same way again? Subscribe because the real stories are always darker than the rides themselves.